When you've had your tea, Catcher, would you help me out and take Mr. Villiers over to him?
Yep.
And Will, on your way home, you go and see Alf Tawny for me.
If you like.
I do like. Tell him I want a nice chicken for Madam's dinner tomorrow.
Why is Mr. Villiers not working in his own home? He has a wife, too. I think it's funny.
It's quiet there for his work. And I reckon Mr. Nightingale likes the idea of having a writer in the family.
Books.
He's proud, like.
Well, Mrs. Nightingale's not proud. She don't like her brother at all, I think.
Don't you go saying things like that, young Catcher. Madam.
Good afternoon. Any tea left?
I just add some hot water to it, madam.
Oh, Catcher, were you going down to the village tonight?
Not the village. I meet a friend in King's Markham.
Oh, that's all right. There's a parcel in the hall you could post for me, if you would.
Can I lend the car?
Of course.
Here comes Mr. Pop Music.
You sit down and have your tea, Sean.
Afternoon, all.
Sean, for pity's sake, take those things out of your ears.
What?
Turn it off. Not if we can't all hear that buzzing noise. Like a bee in a bottle it is. Madam doesn't want to have to listen to that racket.
I like pop music.
There you are, see. She's not a square.
That's no way to talk about Mrs. Nightingale.
You're all the same, you wrinklies. Stuck in a groove.
Your groove's gardening, Sean Lovell, and don't you forget it.
I take Mr. Villiers' tea to him now, I think.
He is perfectly capable of getting his own tea. He wants tea.
It's no trouble.
Yeah, sure. Lost one of your earrings, have you?
Leave it out, Will.
Now then, Will, you shouldn't tease him. You mustn't take any notice of what they say, you know.
Just pig ignorant. That's all they are. What do I care about? I've got to get going. I'll be 23 in October. Look at George Michael. 19, he was a star.
You know what I promised, Sean? I won't forget.
Want to lift home, Mrs. Cantrip?
That's very kind of you, dear. I'm sorry if I was sharp with you earlier, Catcher.
Sharp?
When you was talking about Mrs. Nightingale and her brother, I didn't want no talk in front of Will Palmer. He's like an old woman the way he gossips.
But you wasn't sharp, Mrs. Cantrip. My mother, she will teach you what sharp is.
As long as you didn't take it amiss, dear.
You know, every day in the holidays, Mr. Villiers is working up there. And never, not once, Mrs. Nightingale is going up to see him. I think it's funny not to like your own brother.
Maybe he's not easy to like. You can depend on it. If there's a quarrel, and I'm not saying there is, mind, it's not Madam's fault. He's got a very funny manner with him, as Mr. Villiers. Nasty temper, sarcastic-like. Between you and me, Catcher, I wouldn't be too happy if I had a boy at that school where he teaches.
Dennis, how nice to see you.
Hello, Quentin.
Oh, dear. Rather glum.
Well, term starts in 2 days' time.
Oh, yes, of course.
So, no more proper work until Easter. Ah, which reminds me. An advanced copy. I thought you might like it.
Dennis, thank you. Wordsworth in Love by Dennis Villiers.
Read the dedication.
For my brother-in-law, Quentin Nightingale, a true friend and patron. Makes me feel like the Earl of Southampton.
The only begetter of these ensuing essays, Mr. Q.N. Well, as long as you like it.
Have you seen Elizabeth today?
No, should I have?
No, I just wondered.
No, I haven't seen anybody.
Well, I can't wait to get started on the book. How's my beautiful wife?
Hello, Quentin. I've missed you. Had a good day.
Not so bad. London's madhouse. Drink?
Oh, just a tomato juice for me.
Churchill not about.
She took the car into King's Markham.
All on our own then, are we?
All on our own.
I wonder if Dennis and Georgina will look in.
I shouldn't think so.
Maybe I'll give them a ring. See if they'll come over for a hand of bridge. What do you think?
It's up to you, darling.
Would you like to?
Well, you decide. I really don't mind one way or the other.
I'll just give them a ring then. Of course, they may not want to come.
Why in God's name did you double 2 no trumps? You've given them the game and the rubber.
Well, I thought that if I was...
Thought? No, that's not possible.
One more.
No, I've got a couple of hours' work to put in at the school library before I go to bed.
What, again?
I told you earlier I've got a reference to look up.
Dennis is dedicated to his work.
What else is there?
Oh, Georgina, there's something I've been meaning to give you. I'm sure you're going to love it.
Talking of dedication, would you write in the book for me?
Yes, of course.
The thought of our past years in me doth breed perpetual benediction. Your brother, Dennis Villas, that's not like you.
What is it?
To be inaccurate should be brother-in-law.
There's no need for too much bloody accuracy.
It's really lovely, Elizabeth, thank you.
You're more than welcome, my dear. I'll never use it again.
When you've finished billing and cooing,
Well, that was very pleasant. I think I'll go straight to bed, darling. Going to stay up for a bit, are you?
I may have a walk in the garden before I go to bed.
It's quite chilly out there.
I'll put a coat on.
Mind you do. Good night, then.
Good night, darling. Sleep well.
All right. She'll still be dead when we get there.
You're going to need the hose, John, to make sure the downpipe's clear.
Yeah, all right.
Murder, sir. Not much doubt about that. No. Skull was stove in, wasn't it? Not much suspicion of suicide there. Morning. Morning, John.
Oh, hello, Reg.
How long has she been dead?
Well, I'll have to check with the Met Office about the temperature last night, but since about midnight, give or take an hour.
Pretty woman.
Someone didn't like her.
Hello?
You took your time, didn't you?
Sorry, I was cleaning out the gutter.
Well, I can't keep dragging you out of the gutter, Mike.
Try and be back for lunch, Mike.
Not a hope, I'm afraid.
I've made this enormous steak and kidney pie.
What were you doing up here so early?
I was worried I'd left the ventilation open in the greenhouse. And that wind. Oh, morning, sir. What's the news? Buggering up my garden, that's the news.
Well, they're looking for the weapon that killed Mrs. Nightingale.
Don't reckon you'll find it among my hellebores?
We'll see. Oh, Mr. Palmer here found the body.
Oh.
Mr. Palmer, what did you think when you found that Mr. Nightingale wasn't in his bedroom?
I don't know what I thought. I thought he might be in his bathroom, the door being shut.
But you didn't look.
Well, no, sir. I mean, it wasn't my place to be in the house at all, really. And I wouldn't have been if it hadn't been for finding the doors open and thinking it might be burglars. Besides, sir, all they slept separate like. They were married and...
And you quite reasonably thought that he might be in Mrs. Nightingale's bedroom.
Yes, sir, I did at that. Mind you, the gentry have their funny ways. Likes of me and you don't always see things the same way they do.
And Mrs. Nightingale wasn't in her bedroom either.
And her bed hadn't been slept in, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Palmer. You've been very helpful.
Mr. Nightingale's been real good to me. And Madam, too. There's some I could name. Take advantage. But not me. Don't think I didn't have the opportunity.
Oh, quite sure. But Sean, what's his name?
Lovell, Governor.
Lovell.
Sean Lovell.
He took advantage.
Fancies himself singing in one of them pop groups he does. Madam was soft, you see. She'd just stand there and listen to him when he started this singing. I'd have kicked him right the arse. I can tell you if he'd looked at me the way he looked at her.
Speak good English, do you, Miss Doran?
Oh, no, very bad. Everybody tells me I'm very bad.
How long have you lived here?
Since last spring, nearly 9 months. For my English, my father and Mr. Nightingale are business friends.
Oh, so you know them well. You live like one of the family.
There is no family. It's just him and her. Now she's dead.
Yes, but you were great friends with Mrs. Nightingale, like a grown-up daughter.
A daughter. Oh, I must not laugh when it is so sad. But it is funny to hear what you say. Daughter. Mrs. Nightingale would not like to hear that, I think. She still thinks she's a young girl, very young and pretty in a little skirt and eyeliner on and so.
But she talked to you about her life?
No, never. Nothing.
You must have been lonely.
Oh, no! No, I have my friends in Kings Markham. Many, many friends, boys and girls, too. Why would I want to stay here with old people?
You went to Kings Markham yesterday.
I went to post a parcel for Mrs. Nightingale. And then I see a friend.
And did you see anything when you got here?
Yes, I see Mrs. Nightingale. As I drive past, I see her hiding in the doorway in the wall. Very funny, I think. I see her cross the road and go into the wood. And then I know what she's doing. She's looking to see that no one is following, to spy on her. You see, some people would...
Yes, we understand all that. Well, you've been very frank, Miss Doran.
Yes, I think I've been good. Well, now I'm going to make you a good cup of coffee, tell you all about myself, while this old police chef talks to poor Mr. Nightingale.
Oh, well, that's very... I don't drink it, as a matter of fact. I've had some already, anyway.
Some other time, perhaps. We'll have to talk to you again, Miss Doran.
Yes, I think so too.
Come along, Inspector.
Mr. Nightingale.
I think you're taking a very
It's Mr. Nightingale, sir. He's locked himself in his room.
No answer, sir. I don't blame him. Mr. Nightingale?
Mr. Nightingale.
Is there any other way into this room?
No, just a window.
Mr. Nightingale! Mr. Burden? Mr. Nightingale? King's Markham CID. We have to question you, Mr. Nightingale. We have to question everybody in a case like this.
I realize that. It was childish of me to lock myself in here. What do you want to ask me?
First, yesterday evening. Did you spend it alone?
No. My brother-in-law and his wife came up to play bridge. He's Dennis Villiers. He's a rather distinguished author, writes books about Wordsworth.
Really? How long were they here?
They came at about 8:30 and left at 10:30.
I see. Thank you. How did your wife seem last night?
Absolutely the same as always. She was a terribly generous woman. She always had some little present for my sister-in-law. Last night was just the same. Gave her some little gift.
What was the present?
I don't know. I only heard Georgina thank her for it. She seemed delighted.
Why did your wife go into the forest last night, Mr. Nightingale?
I don't know that either. My God, I wish I did.
Were you a happily married couple, would you say, sir?
Of course we were happily married. Ask any of our friends. Well, ask them. I'm sorry, but would I be like this, the way I am, if we hadn't been happy?
Don't distress yourself, Mr. Nightingale. Mr. Palmer came into your bedroom at just after 6 o'clock this morning. He couldn't find you. Do you mind telling me where you were?
I was in the bath.
Curious time to have a bath.
We all do curious things occasionally. I woke up early. The wind woke me. Did you hear the wind last night?
It was very strong, I believe.
I couldn't go back to sleep again, so I had a bath.
Well, thank you, Mr. Nightingale.
That's odd.
What is?
Come and have a look. The towel's still wet, but it's on a hot rail. Wouldn't take 7 hours to dry, would it?
Well, either he's had 2 baths, or just one, between 9 and 10 this morning.
So the first one could have been a cleaning up operation. There ought to be blood on the towel, or somewhere. It doesn't seem to be.
Made from the digestive juices of a cow, or so I'm told. Why such high cost, having so short a lease? Dost thou upon thy fading mansion spend?
Pardon?
Just a line of a sonnet that came into my head.
Personally, I was thinking what a waste of money when you've got to get old anyway. I think there was another man, Reg. I can't believe she went to all this trouble just for her husband.
Well, some women do, Mike. But yes, I think there was another man.
The man she went into the forest to meet, presumably. What's your theory? That Nightingale suspected, followed her into the forest and killed her?
I don't have a theory. But there's a candidate for the third side of our triangle.
The gardener's boy? Can't be more than 20.
I want to know about your movements last night. What time did you knock off here?
About 5.
Where'd you go?
Went home, had my tea, watched telly and went to bed.
Do you live on your own?
No, with me old lady, my mother.
And your mother watch television with you?
Of course.
Haven't you got a girlfriend?
You seen the girls round here?
So you and your mother watched television until you went to bed?
Sure.
What programs did he?
Well, there was Coronation Street. Then that sitcom about a couple of women working in a bank. Then Minder. And the news.
So what time did you get to bed?
I don't know. Oh, yeah. After the news, we watched that Australian film about the war. It was good.
Odd that.
What?
I was going to watch that Australian film that Lovell was on about.
Oh?
They cancelled it. Put on a musical instead. And who were her friends, Mrs. Cantrip? Who called on her?
Well, sir, there was the lady she saw on business like, arranging bazaars and gymkhanas, if you know what I mean. And then there was their friends as came here to dine. Sir George and Lady Larkin Smith, Mr. and Mrs. Primero. Oh, all the county folk.
What about men friends?
Men friends, sir?
Well, a lady can have men friends these days without there being anything improper.
Oh, no, sir. Her friends was their friends, sir.
Fair enough. Just one other thing, Mrs. Cantrip. Did you remove a damp towel from Mr. Nightingale's bathroom this morning?
No, sir, definitely not. I wasn't looking for work this morning, I can assure you. Now, I change the sheets Monday mornings and the towels Tuesday and Friday.
Supposing somebody else were to have done it?
No, they couldn't have, sir. The soiled linen's kept in a bin in the back kitchen. No one's been near it today. I can vouch for that.
Well, I don't doubt your word, Mrs. Cantrip, but just to set my mind at rest, Mr. Burden, will you have a look? I've got to go and see Mr. Villas. Where will I find him?
Round the other side of the stable block.
Mr. Villas lives here in this house?
No, not lives, sir. He comes up every day to do his writing like. You can't miss it. Take the little path round the side of the stable. The old house, it's called.
I'm Chief Inspector Wexford.
Good morning, Chief Inspector. What can I do for you?
Just a few questions, sir.
Certainly. Sit down, will you?
I realise this must have been a shock for you.
Well, to tell you the truth, it makes very little difference. My sister and I weren't particularly attached to each other.
Oh? May I know why not?
We had nothing in common. She was a empty-headed, frivolous woman, and, well, I'm not a frivolous man.
I believe you and your wife spent the evening in the manor.
Yes, we played bridge. We left at 10:30. We live near Clusterwell. It takes, well, 10 minutes to drive there from the manor. My wife and I went straight to bed.
And how did your sister seem? Normal?
She seemed exactly the same as always. The gracious lady of the manor whom everyone loved. Her bridge was appalling, but then it was neither more nor less appalling than usual.
Did you know that she took nocturnal walks in the forest?
I knew that she took nocturnal walks in the grounds. Presumably it was because she was foolish enough to venture further that she met the end she did.
I wonder, sir, were you surprised by her death?
Of course I was surprised. I was shocked.
Well, you've Made it quite clear that you disliked your sister. Strange that you so willingly accepted her generosity.
I accepted my brother-in-law's generosity, Chief Inspector. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have rather a lot of work to do. How dare you? Get out of my room.
Well, we'll speak again later, sir. When you're more under control.
A shabby-looking dump. I think a teacher would keep his house in trim.
School teacher and successful author. That car's been washed this morning. Funny thing to do the morning you hear that your sister's been murdered.
It isn't his car. He drives an Allegra. Must be his wife's.
I wouldn't have said it was muddy in the forest last night, would you?
Tacky. We had rain last weekend, remember?
Right. Drive on, Bryant.
Yes, sir.
We'll leave the villas for now. I'd like the answer to three main questions at the moment.
Why was Nightingale taking a bath at 5 in the morning?
Right. Or why was he pretending to? Why did Sean Lovell tell me that he'd been watching a television programme last night, which in fact had been cancelled at the last moment?
What's the other one?
Why was Elizabeth Nightingale friendly with everyone, except her only brother? Mrs. Lovell.
What do you want?
Mrs. Lovell.
That's right. What do you want?
A word with you, if you please. We're police officers.
Better come in. About her over at the house, is it? His lordship said there was police about.
His lordship?
My boy, Sean.
We're just making routine inquiries, Mrs. Lovell. Would you mind telling me how your son spent last evening?
You can sit down if you like.
This week is juggler Tony Anthony. He's hoping to entertain our crowd into giving him more than the £15.30 earned by our champion busker so far, magician John Lennon.
At his tea, then he said about watching the TV. Why not? He pays the licence, don't he?
Oh, I'm sure he does. He didn't watch it after 9:30, though, did he?
He went out.
Where'd he go?
I never asked. I don't interfere with his ways, and he don't interfere with mine. Maybe he went down the shed. Spends a lot of time down the shed, he does. Got his records down there.
Can't he play his records in the house?
He can if he wants. Don't matter to me one way or the other. I don't interfere with him, and he don't with me.
What time did he get back in?
I never heard him. My gentleman friend came round about 7. Sean and him don't hit it off all that grand. Reckon that's why his lordship took himself off. He hadn't come in when my friend went, 10:30 that'd be. But there, like I say, I don't interfere with him and he don't with me.
Yes. Sean was very fond of Mrs. Nightingale, I believe.
You can believe what you like. Live and let live. That's my motto. Her, up at the house. She believed in interfering with folks, making them better themselves. Gave his lordship some funny ideas.
What sort of ideas?
Getting into show business, singing, all that. I never took that much notice. Maybe she fancied him. I never asked.
Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Lovell. You'd have no objection to searching the house?
Search all you like. Rather you than me.
Never, in all my years of CID work.
Bit depressing, eh?
Disgusting.
Well, your lady friend did warn you.
There was a rotting pigeon underneath the bed.
Yeah, and what about the kitchen?
Oh. Take a look at this. Quite a contrast, eh? Could almost be a love nest.
Oh, I'm sorry, no one's ever going to persuade me that a lady like Mrs. Nightingale would have assignations with Sean Lovell in a place like this.
Oh, you're probably right.
Easy access to the forest, though.
So what was he doing last night?
Well, he wasn't in the pub, sir. I checked there.
The last bus from Myfleet leaves at 9:30. He wasn't on that.
No, sir.
Maybe he was playing his records in the shed.
Well, then why did he lie about it? Mrs. Villas,
Yes?
we're police officers.
Oh, morning. Afternoon. Afternoon, rather. My husband's not here. He won't be long. He's gone back to the manor.
It's you we'd like to talk to, Mrs. Villas.
Oh, would you? Oh, right. You can come in. Please, sit down. Right. Well, what would you like to ask me?
Just a couple of routine questions, Mrs. Villas. First of all, did you and your husband come straight back here after your visit to the manor last night?
Yes.
And what did you do when you got back here?
We went to bed, straight to bed.
Did you drive up in that car outside?
No, we went in Dennis's car. We've got two cars, you see. When we got married last year, I had a car, Dennis had a car. Only old cars. We decided to keep them both. They're not worth much, you see. Dennis is out in his car at the moment. His car's newer than my car, of course.
But your car outside has just been cleaned. Won't you sit down, Mrs. Villas? Do you always clean your car on a Thursday? I expect you're like my wife. A special time of the week for every little job, and then nothing gets left out.
No, I'm afraid not. I'm not methodical. I know I ought to be. I know Dennis would like it if I was, but why do you ask?
Well, I'll tell you. If you were methodical, you'd work to a routine and be conditioned by it. But as you're not, and you only clean your car when you feel like it or when it's dirty, why did you choose today of all days?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't understand.
I suppose you took the very sensible attitude that if you're unhappy or worried, one works to take one's mind off one's troubles.
Yes. Yes, that was it. You see, I mean, I wasn't very upset. She wasn't my sister.
Oh, true. She was your husband's sister. Your sister-in-law. They didn't like each other, did they?
No, they didn't. They didn't get on at all. You must know, Dennis couldn't stand her.
Strange. Elizabeth Nightingale seemed to get on with everybody else.
Did she? Oh, the county people, you mean? Yes, well, Elizabeth didn't have any real friends. My husband, Dennis, he thinks she was killed by a maniac. One of those men that goes around attacking women. And I expect that's what it was. I mean, she must have been mad to go to the forest at night. Really, she was asking for it.
What does he do with his money, Mike? It's not spent on here. I mean, I know he don't make a fortune writing books about William Wordsworth, but he's got a good teaching job. She's a bit jumpy, isn't she?
Bit thick, if you ask me. Oh, she's probably just nervous about being interviewed by policemen. I dare say she's fine in the ordinary way.
Nothing here. No traces of blood. Nothing that can conceivably be used as a murder weapon. This is blazing away merrily. They could have burned anything in here. And she's had hours to do it. Well, Mrs. Willers.
I can't think why my husband's so long. I mean, you'd think that today he'd want to be here with me. Oh, it's him now. Excuse me.
Here she is. jump his chin.
Shh. Mr. Villas? Get the ambulance, Mike, quick. Excuse me, Mr. Villas came in yesterday with a stroke.
I only came in this morning.
Oh, thank you.
I told you to leave her alone.
She's gonna make me late!
Is she well enough to go to school, Mike?
You know she is. It's always the same at the beginning of the term. She spends an hour being sick in the bathroom, and then as soon as she gets to school, she's fine.
She's too sensitive, that's the trouble.
I'm not sensitive. If I ever have kids and they go on like her, I'll give them a right walloping.
There you are. You see, John isn't a bit worried. You know you were getting terribly bored being at home all the time. Good God.
You know that Villas was discharged himself from hospital.
Nothing wrong with him. Good morning, Reg.
Morning. He was dying yesterday.
Rubbish. They went over him with a microscope at the infirmary. He's as fit as you are, Reg. Fitter.
All right, all right. Doesn't seem to me to be fit at the best of times.
He works too hard, that's all. I ought to know. He's a patient of mine.
And I suppose, being a true priest of the medical profession, you're going to keep whatever's wrong with him locked in your Hippocratic bosom.
I would if there was anything to lock. There's nothing wrong with him.
No, I just seen.
Who?
Dennis Villas. Large as life, on his way to work.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with him, apparently.
What about the fit he had yesterday?
Who knows? The trendy young registrar at the hospital plumps for an allergic reaction.
And you?
Psychosomatic.
Psychosomatic. Let's go to my office. This place is like a morgue.
The old ones are the best ones.
Could it have been guilt?
His sister's just been murdered, remember? You'd expect some sort of reaction.
Head to guts. What are you going to tell us about Elizabeth Nightingale?
Ah, Elizabeth Nightingale.
Let me take your coat.
Oh, thanks, Rich. Yes, Elizabeth Frances Nightingale was a well-nourished and well-preserved woman of about 40.
41.
Blah, 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 blah. Ah, yes. Death resulted from a fractured skull and multiple injuries to the brain. At least a dozen blows were struck with a not very blunt metal instrument. I don't mean a knife or an axe. I mean something with sharper edges to it than, say, a piece of lead pipe or a poker.
What do you think it might have been?
Oh, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Don't think I'd care to hazard a guess.
The weapon we're looking for depends to some extent on whether the murder was premeditated or not.
Go on.
Well, did our man go into the woods knowing he was going to commit a murder and take a weapon with him? Or was he just out for a walk? In which case, the murder would have had to be committed by whatever came to hand.
All right, well, let's suppose for a moment that it was unpremeditated. What would he be carrying? I mean, what do people take out into the woods at night?
A walking stick?
Too thin. Shooting stick, possibly. Might seem a bit far-fetched, but golf club?
For a few practice drives through the trees?
How about the metal heel of a shoe?
Any dirt in the wound?
Oh, good God, we're missing the obvious. You asked the question yourself, Reg. What do people carry when they're going out into a wood at night?
A torch. We've got a couple. We keep them in the garden room. I will show you.
Are you at home to visit us, sir? For 2 pins, I'd send them away with a flea in their ear.
You'd better see who it is.
Oh, hello, Mrs. Cantrip. Is, Quen. How are you? Thought I'd come and see how you were bearing up. It's all been so dreadful for you.
It's nice to see you, Georgina.
Anyway, I brought my own lunch so that Mrs. Cantrip won't have to be cooking for me, and... You look bad, Quen. Still, I know it's been a bit of a strain and everything, and yeah, perhaps I shouldn't have come.
No. It's good of you to trouble. Come into the drawing room. Perhaps Mrs. Cantrip could take you to where the torches are kept.
Of course.
There's quite a nasty accident here 5 or 6 years back. And that Mr. Toohey fell down the stairs. Thought he'd broken his leg. Been a bit too free with Mr. Nightingale's whiskey bottle, if you ask me.
Who was Mr. Toohey? Friend of the family?
Oh, no, sir. Just a servant. Him and his wife used to work here, if you can call it work. They didn't lighten my load much, I can tell you. I was never so relieved in all my life as when Mr. Nightingale sacked them.
Lovely surprise.
How are you, Lionel?
Very much better indeed for seeing you, Reg. I was saying to Hypatia only yesterday how miserable I was because you'd utterly deserted me, and here you are. Well, have you just come to renew acquaintance with scenes of your former glory?
Oh, scarcely. You got a couple of seconds.
I've got a whole free period.
You've heard about Elizabeth Nightingale?
What a ghastly thing.
You were very thick with them. I want to know about the Nightingales, Lionel. Where was she born?
Here, of course. Didn't you know? She and Dennis were born here.
I know hardly anything about them.
That's what I liked, total ignorance. As I say to the spotted devils here, blessed are they who hunger and thirst for enlightenment, for they shall be filled, even if I have to knock it into them with a slipper.
Can we get on? Can we get on?
Oh, very well. Well, they were born here, all right. In a nasty little damp house down by Kingsbrook Lock. Their mother came from London. Quite a good family. But their father was Kings Markham born and bred. He was a clerk in the council offices.
Not well off, then.
Poor as church mice, my dear. Both Elizabeth and Dennis went to the council school, as it then was, and no doubt he would have gone on wasting his sweetness on the desert air. But for the crash.
Crash? What crash?
You remember? A train crash at Cheriton Halt.
Oh, yes. In the 50s. London train went into the back of a goods train.
That's right. 1956, 5 people killed. 2 of them were villas père and mère on their way back from their Christmas shopping spree at Gamage's.
Good God. What happened to the children?
Well, a rather peculiar and most unfair arrangement was made for them. Dennis, he was about 5 then, was sent to his mother's brother and did very well for himself. This uncle was a barrister in a good way of doing, and he sent Dennis to some public school and then to Oxford.
And Elizabeth?
Oh, poor Elizabeth. She was left behind with her father's sister, who took her away from the high school when she was 15 and sent her to work at Moran's.
Mrs. Nightingale, a draper's assistant?
I thought that would shake you. Yes, that old bitch, Priscilla Larkin Smith, still goes around telling her mates about the time she was fitted for corsets by Elizabeth Nightingale.
How did she come to meet Nightingale?
She wasn't at Moran's for long. She ran away to London, got a job, clever little thing, and... Out, spotty devil! Oh, go on! Where was I?
Elizabeth Nightingale was in London.
Oh, yeah.
Did she and her brother meet there again?
That I wouldn't know. I didn't see either of them again until I heard that Quentin had bought the manor. You can imagine my joy when I heard who this Mrs. Nightingale was.
Not really. Since she was a kid of 15, and you were nearly 30 when you last met.
Oh, Reg, you do pour cold water on one's impulsive little expressions. Now, I mean, it was lovely to see someone I used to know. It was always a joy to be with Elizabeth. You have to make allowances for Dennis.
Oh, indeed? Why?
Well, poets are curious creatures.
Poet? I didn't know he was a poet.
Oh, dear me, yes. By the time he reappeared in Kings Markham, several very charming little verses of his had appeared in the New Statesman. So, as I say, I made allowances.
Oh, so he came back to Kings Markham?
Yes, I said, perhaps you're relying on your sister to give you the entree. I said, don't forget, she's new here herself. He went quite white. My sister here, he said. You don't mean to say you didn't know, I said. Christ, he said. I thought this was the last place she'd want to show her face in.
Well, what was he so upset about?
I asked myself the same thing at the time. Right from the start, Elizabeth acted towards him as if he's done her some injury. And as for him, well, the man's rudeness to her was beyond belief. But of course, you can't lay too much stress on that because, well, Dennis is foul to everyone except Quentin, and of course, Quentin adores him. Elizabeth and Dennis were enemies right from the start. But if you want to know why, I can't help you.
And she never spoke about it?
Never.
What is it, Mike?
Come and have a look.
A torch with a big head. A big head and a long, thick metal tube thing to hold it with. About 9 or 10 inches long.
And when did you last see it down here?
2 or 3 weeks back. You don't really clean a room like this, sir, if you take my meaning. Young Sean gives it a sweep out every so often.
Does he? Well, now we know the weapon we're looking for.
The same number of men as we had yesterday. Yeah. Straight away, please.
There's a torch missing from the garden room.
I beg your pardon?
A torch, a big one. 10, 12 inches long, brass-coloured. You seen it lately?
It was there on Sunday. I went in to get my golf clubs. I saw it then.
Well, it isn't there now. That torch killed your wife, Mr. Nightingale.
I don't honestly think I could take any more. Yesterday was the worst day of my life.
Well, I can't promise you that today or tomorrow will be any improvement.
I think I'm going mad. I must have been mad to do what I did. I'd give everything I've got to go back to Wednesday evening and start again.
Making some sort of a confession. Because if you are...
Not that sort of confession.
Well, what sort?
It doesn't matter.
Mr. Nightingale, this is a very serious business.
Oh, my God.
What sort of a confession?
Would you get me a drink, please?
Mr. Burden.
Whiskey. Could the inspector believe us? I'm sorry.
Do you mind waiting outside, Inspector Burden?
I don't know where to begin. I could just tell you baldly. I need to justify myself. You said that nobody involved in a murder case has any right to a private life. I can see that now. I've got to tell you about my private life so that you'll understand. I used to go to her room once a fortnight, always on a Saturday night. She'd push back the bed covers and say, "This is nice, darling." Always the same. And afterwards, when I left her to go to my room, she'd say, "That was lovely, darling." She never called me by my name. Sometimes I think she forgot what it was. It was disgusting, really. Sometimes I used to feel I was married to a sort of doll that smiled and wore pretty clothes and had a vocabulary of a certain limited kind.
And yet, you say you were happy.
Did I say that? Everyone else said I was. I grew used to telling myself I must be. Katya's a really nice person.
Yes.
Her father's an old business associate of mine who runs a small shipping line in Holland.
Pretty girl.
My wife thought she was ugly. Fat and coarse was the way she once described her. I suppose I was attracted to Katya from the start, but I didn't do anything about it then. She was a young girl, and I was, well, in loco parentis. I told myself I thought of her as a daughter. We do manage to delude ourselves, don't we?
You slept with her? Night before last?
Yes. It wasn't the first time. That was 5 weeks ago. But it really started 8 months ago when Katya first came. For the first time, I saw a woman who was close to me, a woman living under my roof, behaving like a woman. Well, perhaps not as a woman should behave. I don't know. She had boyfriends all over the place. She used to tell me about them. Sometimes in the evening, Elizabeth would be out, and Katya would come in from some date and tell me about it, giggling and laughing. One night, after one of these talks with Katya, I was lying in bed. Elizabeth was walking in the garden. I lay there, listening to Katya moving about upstairs. I thought I'd give everything I possessed. I mean, literally everything. If she'd come into my room and sit on the bed and talk to me. And I put on my dressing gown and went upstairs. I knocked on her door. She was sitting up in bed reading a magazine. I didn't have to say anything. I don't know what I'd have said anyway. She smiled at me and put out her arms. Oh, God, this is... There were other times, not many. There was the night before last. I went up to Katya about 11:15. I didn't know whether Elizabeth had come in. I wasn't thinking about Elizabeth. Katya and I stayed with her all night. It was only Palmer walking on the floor below that woke me. I sensed something was wrong. I got up and dressed.
Pity you didn't tell us all this before, sir.
Put yourself in my place. Would you have?
Well, that's beside the point. I won't keep you long, Miss Durham. Will you sit down? Do you mind switching off the radio for a moment?
Oh. You are very serious today.
I'd like to ask you about your relation with Mr. Nightingale. What terms were you on with him?
Terms?
You know perfectly well what I mean, Miss Durham.
He's an old friend of my father. He's very nice and kind. I like him very much.
He's your lover, isn't he?
Has he said this?
Yes.
Oh.
Would you mind telling me all about it?
No. Quentin says I must not.
Well, come, Miss Durham. He told me himself. Do you want Mr. Nightingale to go to prison?
No. This is true? In England you can go to prison because you make love?
No, of course not. Look, Miss Durham, just tell me the truth, and Mr. Nightingale won't go to prison. Just tell me everything that happened between you. No, not everything. Just how it began and so on.
All right. It's 4 or 5 weeks ago. I am in my bed, and there's a knock. And it's Quentin. Perhaps he's going to say the radio's too loud or I've parked my car wrong. But he doesn't have to say something because at once I know he wants to make love. I can see this in his face. And so I think, why not? I think how he's nice with kind manners and a thin, straight body. And I forget that he's older than my father in Holland. Also, I know he's a lonely man, married to a frigide, cold woman. So we made love.
How long did he stay with you the night before last?
All the night. But he went away early in the morning because he heard the gardener man walk about. So I lie in my bed thinking maybe I shall not see my other friend anymore and go only with Quentin. And then I got up too to see why the gardener man was in the house. Well, there. Well, now I've told it all. Are you angry with me?
No. No, I'm not angry, Miss Doran.
I wish you would call me Katja, please.
Oh, Katja.
Because you're like my old uncle, who's sometimes kind and sometimes cross like you.
Yes. There are two lines to pursue. Who was Mrs. Nightingale's lover? And who had access to the torch?
Well, who did have access to it? Nightingale himself, Mrs. Cantrip, Will Palmer.
Sean Lovell, Georgina Villas, Dennis Villas.
Katja Dawn.
What about Sean Lovell? He's confessed his admiration for Mrs. Nightingale. He's young, hot-headed, therefore jealous. It might not have been him that she went out to meet, but he might have seen her with another person. He had access to the torch. His alibi is hopeless, and his garden gives out under the forest.
She was old enough to be his mother.
Oh, my God, Mike. You don't know anything about life, do you? Did you ever fancy any of your mother's friends?
Certainly not. My mother's friends were like aunts to me. I called them Auntie. I still do come to that. What's so funny?
You are. If I didn't laugh, I'd go round and twist.
What's Wexford, sir? I couldn't understand it, sir. I just came in and there it was.
Someone's put it back.
Whilst we were here, someone's put it back.
My dear Reg.
Am I too early for you?
How could it be too early? I was only saying a moment ago how wonderful it would be if dear old Reg Wexford dropped in. Come in, come in.
I couldn't understand some of the things you told me at the school yesterday.
The spotted devils say the same to me every day.
I couldn't understand this. You said that Villiers and his sister couldn't stand each other, yet he seemed to spend every waking moment up at Myfleet Manor.
Well, you see, he and Quen got on like a house on fire. Thank you, darling. Quen was thrilled to bits to find he had an up-and-coming writer as a brother-in-law. I suppose he saw himself in the light of Dennis's patron. Of course, the worst thing was, a couple of years ago, Quen and Elizabeth had arranged to go to Yugoslavia on holiday, and at the last moment, Quen got measles.
Oh?
And then Quentin came up with a bright idea that Dennis go instead of him. Cheers.
Cheers. What happened?
Well, Elizabeth told me she absolutely dreaded being stuck with Dennis in Dubrovnik, but Quentin said that he'd never forgive either of them if he stayed at home on his account, so they had to put up with it.
Did he go?
Well, they must have rowed the whole time. They looked absolutely rotten when they got back. And there was a distinct coolness between Dennis and Quen all the following winter. Dennis even stopped going up to the manor. And then one day in June, the summer before last, I was up there, and in walks Dennis. You're a stranger, Quen says, but I could tell he was overjoyed.
Why did he suddenly appear again?
Well, all he said was, I only came to tell you I can't go to Rome with you next month.
So they made some arrangements?
Apparently.
Oh, so they weren't on non-speaking terms, then?
Oh, no. It was just that he didn't spend all his evenings and weekends up there anymore.
Why do you think he didn't go to Rome?
Well, that's the funny part. He said, I've come to tell you I can't go to Rome with you next month. I promised the head I'll be one of the escorts to the school party. So I said, what, you'll pass up Rome with a lousy Costa Brava? He said, I'm going, it's all fixed. He was adamant. I think Elizabeth was absolutely delighted not to be stuck with old Misery Face. In fact, she told me as much when I went up there to witness her will. And
her will?
Is this where you used to meet Mrs. Nightingale?
Don't make me laugh. I haven't set foot in there since December, on account of him being in there. Me and old Palmer got strict orders not to come in there in case we disturb him, see?
You go into the garden room, though, don't you? Going to sweep it out. Ever borrow a torch, Lovell, to light your way when you went to meet Mrs. Nightingale in the forest?
You off your knob? You trying to make out I was carrying on with Mrs. Nightingale? You're just a dirty-minded old prat, you
All right,
are,
that'll
like the rest.
do. You were on extremely friendly terms with her. We know that.
So, she was helping me, that's all.
Helping you do what?
What, my career?
Oh, I see. Helping you do the gardening.
Gardening. That's not my career.
Oh? What is then?
Doesn't matter. You think I'm going to spend 40 years doing this? End up like Will Palmer, brain dead. You think that's all I'm fit for? I'll show you. Mrs. Nightingale was the only one who understood. She's dead.
And what was Mrs. Nightingale going to do for you then?
There was this bloke in the BBC she knew. She was going to mention my name. Maybe for singing. Maybe for a DJ. All I got to do is be there. They can't ignore me if I'm there.
What's wrong with gardening? These fancy ideas never get you anywhere.
Oh, yeah. Grow up, settle down, kill your brain.
Why did you tell the Chief Inspector you were watching a television program when that television program wasn't even shown?
I had been watching the telly. I got fed up. My old lady had her bloke in for the evening, that Alf Tony. Sat there grinning at me like a couple of Toby jugs. He's very witty, as Alf Tony. One fell after another my mother's had ever since I was a child. And all they've ever wanted is me out of the way. When I was about 10, I saw my mum with one of them, kissing and pawing each other. And I picked up a carving knife and went for her. I'd have killed her. I would. Only the bloke got the knife away and hit me.
I see. Inclined to let your feelings run away with you, were you?
I was 10, for Christ's sake. I'm not like that now. She can do what she likes.
Your mother, this is?
Yes. My mother.
When you got fed up with your mother and Alf Tawny, where did you go?
Down to my shed.
What do you mean, down to your shed? What were you doing down there?
I was sitting there. That's all. Just sitting.
I suppose it's still here. I'd forgotten about it. I presume Elizabeth had too. There it is.
There, sir. This will is perfectly legal, sir. It's witnessed by Myrtle Annie Cantrip and Lionel Hepburn Marriott, and correctly signed by your wife. You'd have a great deal of difficulty contesting this, sir.
But I don't want to contest it.
Don't you want to know what it contains before you commit yourself?
Well, what does it say?
This is the last will and testament of me, Elizabeth Frances Nightingale, born Villas, being of sound mind. I leave all my money, including the money my husband invested for me, to Sean Lovell of 2 Church Cottages, Myfleet, in the hope that he will use it in the furtherance of his ambition.
Good heavens.
And all personal jewelry I possess to my sister-in-law, Georgina Villas, of 55 Kings Markham Road, Clusterwell, so that she may indulge her love of adornment, although, as a virtuous woman, her price is above rubies.
Elizabeth wrote that?
Yes. Oh, Mrs. Villas seems to be a lady who's fond of jewelry. Let's hope there are a few nice pieces for her.
A few nice pieces. A few nice pieces. This is my wife's jewellery, Chief Inspector. At a rough estimate, I'd value it at £600,000. I don't understand any of this.
Nor do I, sir. Nor do I. Not yet, I don't.
I've got something to show you, Governor.
Yes? Where did you find this?
In a hole in the oak. Likely an owl made it.
Squirrel.
Or squirrel, as I was going to say, Alf.
Spare me the natural history.
To cut a long story short, sir, I sticks my hand down a hole, and that's what I found.
Was it in the bag, or did you put it in?
It weren't in no bag, Governor. Just rolled up and stuffed down a hole.
You ever seen it before?
I have, sir. It belonged to poor Mrs. Nightingale. Would that be her blood, sir?
I'm afraid so.
You're gonna be sick.
Not in my kitchen, you're not.
Old stomach complaint. No guts. Wants to be a bleeding pop singer. Mantle, I reckon.
What do you know about Alf Tawney?
Oh, he's nobody, sir. Just a fellow we get our veg and chicken and such from. Lives in a caravan on his ground at Clusterwell. You wouldn't be interested in Alf.
Oh, I don't know. Anyone who was associated with Mrs. Nightingale interests us, even if he only supplied her vegetables.
Mrs. Nightingale never associated with him, sir. If you'd ever heard of him, it was only through that Sean. You may as well know, sir, seeing this is common gossip. Alf's carrying on with Sean's mother.
Oh, dear me. That is bad.
I can't say as I cared for that Sean myself, sir. But no one can deny Mrs. Lovell's neglected him shameful. You might say he never had no proper mother.
And Mrs. Nightingale never had a son.
Oh, Sean wouldn't have dared think of Madam in that way. There are limits.
Well, he's a very handsome young man.
I can't see it myself, sir, but tastes differ. Well, thank you very much for the ride, sir. You and the young gentleman.
Thank you, Mrs. Cantrip. Young gentleman.
Pardon?
Nothing. The poor, neglected Sean Lovell inherits under Mrs. Nightingale's will. Do you think he knew?
And killed her for it?
You inherit a great deal in Mrs. Nightingale's will.
Really? It's a surprise. I had no idea.
You inherit all of Mrs. Nightingale's jewellery.
Really?
Mrs. Villers, you must see that this puts a very different complexion on the circumstance of your sister-in-law's death.
Dennis, there you are. Do you know what? Elizabeth's made a will and left me all those rings and necklaces of hers. Dennis, don't. Dennis, stop it.
Maybe share the joke, sir.
Just a little irony.
I'll have to speak to you again, Mrs. Villers, about the events of last Wednesday night.
But why? I thought it was all over. I was just beginning to stop thinking about it. Oh, God.
I can see that I'm going to have to read that book of yours, sir.
You can have this if it interests you.
Well, thank you. It will interest me. I'm always willing to be enlightened.
I told you about Wednesday night last time you were here. If you've got a bad memory, you ought to have written it down.
Never mind my memory, Mrs. Villers. You just tell me again. At what time did you reach home?
I told you. About 20 to 11. We came in, we went straight to bed, that's all.
No, it isn't, Mrs. Villers. Nobody comes home from an evening out and goes straight to bed. Somebody must have parked the car. Somebody must have locked up.
If that's what you want to know, my husband left the car in the drive.
Did you go into the house together?
Of course.
Side by side, squeezing through the door at the same time?
Don't be silly. I went in first. My husband followed a minute later. He locked the car because it was going to be left in the drive all night.
Who made sure that the windows were closed and the back door locked?
My husband always does that. I went to bed first.
Did you lock up?
No, that's my wife's province. I went straight to bed and straight to sleep.
Excuse me, sir, may I?
Of course.
What about this research you were going to do down at the school? The essential research that made you leave the manor at 10:30.
Don't you ever make excuses to get away from a boring host and hostess, Inspector?
So this was just an empty excuse, a deliberate lie.
Sometimes I do tell lies. I'm a good liar.
Strange that you should bother, sir. A man who declares himself indifferent to the opinion of others. So much he soared beyond, or sunk beneath, the men with whom he felt condemned to breathe. What do you want, Mr. Villers? Why do you set yourself above everyone else?
Or beneath them. Or sunk beneath them, Mr. Wexford. As to what I want, that's simple. I want to die.
Are we going to be able to find a witness to corroborate whether or not he went out again last night?
Or that she did.
Or that she did. All we need is somebody who passed the house and happened to notice whether the car was there or not.
Young Lionel Marriott. Lionel?
Oh, hello, Red.
I need to talk to him. Get that scarf over to the labs, will you? And then you can get off home.
All right.
Well, the assembled might of the King's Markham Law Enforcement Agency.
I'm just leaving, Mr. Marriott.
Oh, not on my account, dear boy, I trust.
No. Good night, sir.
Good night, Mike.
Good night, Mr. Marriott.
Good night.
Sit down a minute, Lionel.
Oh, dear. Is he happy in his work, do you think? He always looks so miserable, poor dear.
Inspector Burden is a Puritan of the old school.
Oh, dear.
Tell me about the holiday that Villers took at the Costa Brava. Yeah, the one he volunteered for.
A holiday? Oh, imagine 2 weeks cooped up with the spotted devils in a torrid slum. They're all in an advanced state of psoriasis at the best of times. But once you get them in the sun, well, you can...
I can imagine. But he met Georgina there, didn't he?
Yeah, she was there with her own party of teenage nymphomaniacs. Not that I heard any of this from Dennis. No, the first hint I got was just before he was due back. Quen and Elizabeth dropped in one evening. We've got some good news, Quen says. Dennis has met a girl, and they're going to be married. Fast worker, I said. And then, of course, I had to say how pleased I was and all that rubbish.
When did you first meet her?
The Nightingales gave a dinner party for the bride. Everybody who was anybody was there. Georgina was the last to arrive. Aha, I thought, making an entrance, a clever little thing. None of us had seen her before, so we all sat there with bated breath. The women were done up to the nines. Elizabeth looked wonderful. Believe it or not, I even saw Dennis looking at her with a sort of grudging admiration. And then, just as we can contain our impatience no longer, in walked Georgina. In Woolworth's pearls. And, well, we used to call them tub frocks. And this one had been in the tub a good many times, I can tell you. Did those women stare? Georgina wasn't a bit shy. In fact, she dominated the conversation at the table. We heard all about her little housewifely plans and how she was going to make a real home for Dennis and how they were going to have 6 children. I must say, Elizabeth was absolutely charming to her. She even complimented her on her dress, and she really tried to keep her the center of attention. Elizabeth was bubbling over with gaiety. She didn't look a day over 25. Oh, my dear Reg, look at the time. You do run on, dear boy. Hypatia is an impatient cook.
Morning, Reg.
A chance to look at that scarf yet?
Yes, I have, as a matter of fact. If you think Elizabeth Nightingale was wearing it at the time the deed was done, you'd better think again.
Brian, Inspector Burden in yet?
No, sir. Em and Sergeant Martin went over to Myfleet, doing a house-to-house.
Right.
It would have been saturated with blood if she'd been wearing it.
Perhaps it was round her neck. Or she could have been holding it in her hand.
Oh, I see. So, after she was dead, she took it off and wiped her head with it. Because that's what it almost certainly was used for. To wipe blood off someone or something.
Was it? You said you were delivering a baby on Tuesday night.
Yes, why?
Well, did your route to Myfleet take you via Clusterwell?
Yes, it did.
Did you happen to notice the villa's bungalow? Were there any lights on or any cars on the drive?
I didn't notice. I was thinking about my patient. If only I'd known.
That's what they all say.
Alf Tawney. He's the chap you want to ask. His caravan's just near the villas place.
All right. Yeah. What time do you reckon to get away from here if you come up here for your tea, Mr. Tony?
Well, Alf has to be up betimes, so he's always gone from here by 11:15. You want to know if he saw anything the night her up at the manor got killed?
Yes, I do. I just wonder if he took a look at the Villas bungalow. You know what I mean, on the Clusterwell Road.
Don't know about look. Alf tried to knock him up, didn't you, Alf?
It were no good. They was out.
He had some rabbits to deliver to Mrs. Villers. He'd been trying all day, but they was out. We didn't want to leave without the money. Alf banged and banged, but no one come, did they, Alf?
No. What time was that?
Well, Alf left here 10:30, and he'd been knocking a long time when the clock struck 11. Clusterwell church clock. Go on, Alf, you tell him you was there.
I banged. No one come. The lights was off. He's out, and she's out, I said to myself.
There.
I might have known. Their cars was gone. Both on them.
Both cars? Are you sure?
Oh, he's sure. Alf don't say much, but when he do, it's the genuine article.
This house was empty and in darkness at 11 o'clock. Why didn't you tell me that you'd gone out again?
I forgot.
You forgot that you'd gone out? Have you also forgotten where you went?
I went when I said I was going, to the school library to look up a reference.
What reference?
Would it mean anything to you if I told you? All right. I was looking up the precise relationship between George Gordon Wordsworth and William Wordsworth.
I see. Mrs. Villers. Did you accompany your husband to the school library?
No.
No, well, you would hardly have used two cars. But you did go out. Where?
I went out. I drove round the lanes.
Why?
My wife was annoyed with me for going out. So she did what she often does on these occasions. She took her own car and went for a country drive to cool her temper.
I'm not convinced, Mrs. Villers. Perhaps we'd talk more frankly down at the police station.
No, tell him, please. Tell him, please.
Tell me what, Mr. Villers?
What my wife wants me to tell you is that you've been a complete bloody fool. My sister's jewelry is fake. It's not worth £50.
This is a fake.
How do you know?
When I bought it for her, I had some words engraved inside. There's nothing inside this one. It's a fake.
Is Mr. Nightingale at home?
You'd better come in. I don't know where Mrs. Cantrip can be. Quentin is in the drawing room. It's the Chief Inspector, darling.
Katya.
Oh, don't be so stuffy, darling. We can't keep it a secret forever.
Secret?
I'd like it kept a secret for the time being. Katya and I are going to be married.
Ah, indeed, sir. Then let me congratulate you.
Well, naturally, we shall wait 6 months. A year might be more...
Oh, no, Quentin. It's not fair you made me wait a whole year for my new sports car.
Well, we'll see.
If you've got a moment, sir, I'd like to have a word with you alone.
Yes, of course. If you wouldn't mind, Katja.
Of course not. We must get something special for dinner tonight, eh?
Oh, yes.
A celebration. I'll go and get Mrs. Cantrip organized.
I'm afraid I have to confirm that these are all fake, sir. She obviously sold everything that you bought her and had exact copies made.
Why?
Your wife sold her jewelry because she needed money. Why did she need money, Mr. Nightingale? What did she do with it?
Well, perhaps she gave it to charity.
£600,000? And why did she keep it a secret from you? No, sir. I think that your wife was being blackmailed.
No, that's impossible. People are only blackmailed when they've done something against the law.
It isn't only an offence against the law. An offence against morality is equally open to blackmail.
You mean she might have been unfaithful to me and someone found out?
Something like that.
Who could she have ever known who would extort money from her?
Well, that's what I was hoping you'd tell me, sir. The servant?
Mrs. Cantrip? Will Palmer? Sean?
You used to have a married couple working here, sir. What was their name?
Toohey.
What about this blackmail angle, then?
Suppose this Toohey found out the secret of Villiers and Mrs. Nightingale's intense dislike for each other.
Well, I don't see how that gives us a motive for blackmail.
Well, Nightingale's very attached to Villiers, we know that. If he found that his wife had done Villiers some dreadful injury...
Well, that doesn't make any sense. Why does it have to be some dreadful injury anyway? It's much more likely that Villiers and Mrs. Nightingale were just incompatible. I mean, look at my two. They really seem to hate each other, but there's no reason for it as far as I can see.
Here we are.
Here?
No sugar.
They've been like cat and dog ever since Pat was a toddler and John was in his pram.
Oh, it'll be different when they're grown up.
But will it? Well, apparently you do get these cases where brother and sister are just incompatible. I don't know. I sometimes think of sending one of them away to boarding school.
And he knows what I think about that, Reg.
Is it possible that Toohey killed her himself? That he was blackmailing her? And he killed her when she told him that the money had run out?
But how would he get hold of the torch? He's the last person that let have access to the garden room.
True. And our case against Georgina falls down because we now know she had no motive.
John!
Sean could have killed her when he saw her with another man.
No, the murder was premeditated.
Yeah?
Now, get me the big saw from the garage, will you?
I can't, Dad. It's dark in there. The bulb's gone.
Well, take a torch. Don't be so feeble.
Oh, we are idiots, aren't we?
If you're going into a dark place, you take a torch. She took her own torch into the forest.
Nobody planned this murder. They were just overcome by a sudden impulse and hit Elizabeth Nightingale with her own torch.
I agree. She took her own torch into the forest, but someone else brought it back.
Someone who knew where it was kept.
Exactly. Thank you.
I'm going to see Sean Lovell on the way back. Get cracking on finding Toohey first thing in the morning, will you? Right. How did Villiers know that jewelry was fake? Good luck, Mike.
What time is it?
So, go to sleep.
Good God.
What's the matter?
Better get dressed. I wonder if it's too early to ring Katja.
Who?
No, it's too early. Miss Doran? It's Chief Inspector Wexford. Yes. Yes, I'm sorry. It's 7:30. Yeah, it is important. You posted a package for Mrs. Nightingale last Wednesday. Yes. What size was it? Was it? Was it? You don't happen to remember the address, do you? You do? If anybody wants me, I'm in London. Thank you. Take the change.
Good, thank you. Keep in touch.
There's a couple of local tours, Mr. Burden. One lives in Brighton and the other one in Forby.
All right, let's have a look then.
What's he doing in Brighton? Yeah. Well, I've got Tui. In London. Look, Brian. I'm catching the 12:05 from Victoria. I want you and WPC Davies to meet me with a car. All right, you get round the back, Brian.
Right, sir.
Polly, you stay with me.
You've got Tui then?
Yes, we've got Tui.
I took the day off work. I'm not well.
Then you won't be surprised by the purpose of our call.
When you quoted Byron at me, I was sure that you knew why. Even if you didn't know how.
The truth is, I couldn't remember the author.
I thought I betrayed myself. I certainly did when I gave you my book to read. And I thought you were too ignorant to equate a short passage in my book with my own life. But you can see what attracted me to Wordsworth. A man who also loved his sister.
How did you meet your sister again after your childhood separation?
It was at the 21st birthday party of a friend of mine. This fellow's father brought his secretary with him, a girl called Elizabeth Langham. I don't know, we went out together. I really had no idea who she was. As far as I knew, I'd never seen her before the night of the party. 16 years had passed.
But she must have known.
Yes. I asked her to marry me, and then she told me. For 2 months, I'd been my own sister's lover.
We parted then. We had to part. She went to work in America, and I went back to Oxford. I don't know how I survived that last year, or how I managed to get a degree.
What did you do when you came down from Oxford?
I knew I'd never earn a living from writing poetry, or from writing about it, so I applied for a teaching job at the school here. I thought it was the one town in the world my sister would be sure to avoid.
Why did you and your sister behave in public as though you hated each other?
Elizabeth's aim was to have me as her lover, and at the same time to keep her position, her money, her reputation. Said that if we showed even normal, fraternal affection in public, we would soon slip into showing a deeper love. Perhaps she was right, but I always felt that part of it was a love of intrigue for its own sake.
And that's when Tui found out and started to blackmail you.
Yes, when he had bled me white, Elizabeth began selling her jewellery and having copies made. You haven't found Tui yet, have you?
Yeah, we've got him.
Good. Because apart from saving Georgina as much suffering as I can, I've only one wish left, and that's to see Tui as wretched as he made Elizabeth.
I wanted her to leave Quentin and come away with me. She refused. If we'd set up house together years ago, no one would have suspected we were brother and sister. Now everyone would know, and the scandal would be monumental. That's what she said. You disagreed? I'd come to the end. I was 36. I'd worked hard all my life, and all I'd earned had gone to keep some Mayfair modist's lover in luxury. I had no wife, no children, no friends. I lived in 2 dingy rooms.
And Elizabeth?
For how long, do you think? No. I decided there was nothing for it but to make a complete break. So I stopped going up to the manor, and I refused all Quentin's invitations. I thought I should be able to work. I lay evening after evening in my room, thinking, doing nothing, contemplating suicide. The strangest thing was I no longer wanted Elizabeth. If I missed either of them, it was Quentin. I went to Spain, and I went as the escort to a party of schoolboys. Georgina was staying in the same hotel. I'm no longer very attractive to the opposite sex, Mr. Wexford, but she fell in love with me. Poor thing. It was quite a joke in that horrible hotel, Georgina's love. I who'd had everything and squandered it, and she who'd never had anything. She was plain and shy and dull. When we were married, I brought her to the manor. Elizabeth was triumphant. I only had to look at her and I knew I'd done a dreadful thing. I was still in love with her. That was the third beginning, and the last. I didn't listen to the stern daughter of God's voice, or the voice of my wife, clamoring for me to be a real husband to her, a compensation for her long loneliness. I listened to my sister.
What happened on the day of Mrs. Nightingale's death?
We'd spent the afternoon together, but that wasn't enough for us. We were sick for each other, so we arranged to meet in the forest at 11. Quentin's invitation to...
Hello, Mrs. Villers. Come in.
Get it over with.
Georgina Villers, you're charged with the murder of Elizabeth Frances Nightingale. You have the right to remain silent, but anything you say may be used in evidence.
I don't care what you take down in writing. She had everything. It was disgusting. She had everything, and all I had was Dennis. So she had to have him too. If I'd known before, I would have killed her sooner. I killed her as soon as I knew. And she was so patronising. Right up till the end, she patronised me.
It was a scarf she gave you that night, wasn't it?
Oh, yes, she gave me a lot of her cast-offs. She thought it was ever so amusing to see me dressed in her handed-down finery. She liked Dennis to see me in things that she'd replaced by something better. I used the scarf to wipe her blood off the torch. Those were her last words to me. That scarf really suits you, dear. She bent over to pick up her torch. She didn't know I'd already picked it up. I'd seen her kissing Dennis. I'd seen her hands all over him. Oh, I'll get tired of him one day. She said, you can have him back. She didn't care what she said to me. I haven't got anything.
Poor woman.
Yes.
Him too. I mean, it wasn't really his fault, was it?
Well, it wasn't anybody's fault.
If it hadn't been for that train crash that killed their parents...
That's it. Blame it on British Rail.
What made you see the light, Reg?
That book of Dennis Villiers. I couldn't sleep, so I read it. I should have read it when he gave it me. I can't remember things like I used to. I'd forgotten about Wordsworth and his sister. I'm an ignorant old copper. Sometimes I wonder if I'm past it.
Oh, come on, Reg, that's nonsense.
Yes, it bloody well is. But I don't read enough. And I don't use my intuition like I used to. Good night, Mike.
Good night, Reg.